So I did a video where I had a camera on a piano and a camera on the paper for Falling in Love, the arrangement. And I was writing out and sketching out notes and things like that and talking about how we did it. And I watched it afterwards, and two things occurred to me. One, it was really hard to see what was going on the paper. And two, it was really boring. I mean, you really have to be into wanting to know the secrets of why we chose specific notes in an arrangement for the piano to like that. So instead, what I did now is I've finished the arrangement in software on the computer, and I will take you through and show you some highlights. Remember that we want three things from our accompaniment. We want it to establish and communicate the harmony that goes on, because that tells us what key we're in and what function things are, and sort of determines the note flavor of the piece. And we want rhythmic support out of this, because it gives us tempo, meter, and it can also add style to it depending on what kind of rhythms we use. And then lastly, we want to support the melody. Now, the chords themselves will do that a lot, because the melody notes are mostly from the chords. But sometimes we embed the melody, and sometimes we put things when the melody is not active to support the sort of downtime there. So what I did was I chose different kinds of styles of accompaniment for different sections, so you could get sort of like a random sampler. It's not like the pieces don't go together, the different sections, but I maybe changed style a little more often than I might have, just because I wanted to demonstrate. So here at the beginning of the intro, I just have the chords. And one thing that's nice to know about piano music is that when we write accompaniments, what note do we put in there? Well, any note from the chord will do often, but roots and sometimes fifths are the best ones. You have to always check, though. Secondly, you want to make sure that these fit in the hand very nicely. And so one or two notes in the left hand and two or three notes in the right hand can make a nice sort of style. And third thing is that the lower you go on the piano, the muddier close notes together, or we call them intervals that are small, sound. And so as you get to the left hand and go lower, tend to spread these notes out further apart from themselves. That's why you'll see octaves or fifths in the left hand. Thirds can work, but you have to use them sparingly the lower you go. So you'll see that notes are closer together in the top than they are in the bottom. And I put rolls on these. This is a symbol to roll your hand one finger at a time, so that it was a little gentler at the beginning. And I'll just play that for you so you can hear it. It's a little mechanical sounding, but you get the idea. Originally, when we wrote the second voice, we talked about humming the melody here, and that's what I did in the accompaniment that you'll be playing for your final. But I embedded it here as well. It will help somebody if they're humming or something at the beginning, and if not, it communicates to the listener what's going on. You'll see that these all fit nicely into the hand, and there's minimal movement. Although we're doing root to root to root in the bass here, you'll see that this is not spelled from the root up, and then this is not spelled from the root up, and that's not spelled from the root up. Instead, we're looking for a good shape here for the hand, and then this F is common, so the other notes move by step while that, minimally changes. And then, although there are no notes in this stack that are the same as that, we moved up by one step right there. Okay, so first style that we're going to look at here would be what I would call, it's very simple, embedding the melody in the right hand, and for the most part, just using block chords in the left hand. Now, this is going to seem really heavy-handed because the computer likes to smack each chord really hard. But here you'll see at the beginning, I'm just using my C chord here and my E chord, but then as I break into the phrase and I see that jumping from E to A is going to be a big leap, Instead, I invert the chord, which means I don't go from A at the bottom up. I just say, well, here's my melody, there's my C, my next note down is an A, and it's close to these notes, and this E is common. And then, since I don't change chords here, I allow myself to bring in the low note down there. And I kind of follow this pattern for all of this right here. We get to the halfway point and we're singing But I Can't Help. Then I decided to break this up a little bit. We're still getting one beat per sound, but instead of block chords, I'm stepping a little bit, like note, chord, note, chord, note, chord, to give us a little variation. And I'll just play this for you so you can hear it. Okay, and that's embedding the melody right in there. So the first time we sing this through, you know that you're going to have great accompaniment telling you exactly what you need to do. And at the end here, because the melody is doing nothing, I put a little more rhythm. I went up the notes of the chord. It's called arpeggiation. And I preceded my first note here with the note that you're going to sing. This next section, I'm not going to play the melody throughout here. We're going to presume that you've gotten over your nerves. It's a simple melody. You can sing this. In this case, I'm putting what we call an arpeggiating style. Arpeggiating means to go up or down through the notes of the chord. So this is going up and then down, and then the next chord up and then down, and so on. If we were to squish these together, you'd find that using that idea from the last one, that notes should stay close. So rather than going C and then E from the bottom up and A from the bottom up, depending, sometimes I will, but sometimes I'll just say, well, how does this get smoothly from one to the next? So you can see here I went C, E, G, and then I top it off with some notes from the chord and I come back down. For my E minor chord, which is E, G, B, I'm going to use the B because it's close to here, so it will fit in the hand. And you start to hear this, and then that fits nicely to the A, which is the harmony line that we wrote for the second voice here, and that would support that. Anyhow, it's a different texture. It's the same idea. Here, again, at the end of this measure, since we didn't have a chord change, I was able to get a little more active with the line, and I went up the notes of the chord and then got to here and realized that if I just did steps up, I could harmonize nicely in thirds or two steps away. So this would it be would be at the same time, and it will sound really good together. And for the second half of this, I decided to break out into, I guess, more like a melodic left hand, right hand duet interchange. So this is like the F and the A from the F chord with a scale, and the C and the A with a scale there. And then the G and the B with the scale up. And so I'm going up, down, up, down, up. And then they come together at the end. It's not uncommon to break up your accompaniment sectionally, having similar but related ideas, but still varied as we go along through. So I will play this for you, and you can hear that. Okay, and before we go to the bridge, I want to point out that I did something sneaky here, which is hopefully delightful. In the end here, ba-da-do-dee-da-da-da-da-da-dee-da-da. Here, I pushed my tops up 1/8 note, and it's giving us a syncopation feel where we get stress, not where you normally expect. And so hopefully, rather than it be jarring, it's like, oh, that was cool. And it's a nice break from the regularity of the other things. And there's nothing going on in the melody here. So again, it's a way of supporting and getting interest. I'm just going to play again from right here, and so you can hear that and note that these guys, they hit early, right? Okay. One other thing that I want to point out is that, there's places where I would make small changes probably still. It's not always going to be perfect in one go. For instance, here, when it comes, I might end up putting that as a rest and that as a rest, so that there's a chance for the hand to re-sync up here. And so that might go bye-bye. That's something that you don't get paralyzed by. You write it in and you say, might need to change that later, but you check that when you play it, or you get somebody to play it for you. Also, just the way that this is notated here on that syncopated part, this runs over a beat. Like this is one and so it might be confusing where these are, and I might renotate this so that this is an eighth note tied to a quarter note, so that we can see where the beat ends and the next beat starts. These are improvements that can happen. All right, bridge. I wanted to show you, so these are block chords in the right hand, and the left hand gets to be the thing that drives the rhythm of this. And this will support Like a River Flows, because you'll hear like a river flows, but it's got the B. I know it's a different octave, but you need to hit it here and you need to hit it there. So it's the top note of your accompaniment. The E happens right after, so that's going to be supported. And then of course the A is right there. Okay, so that happens, right? And I like the sort of the blocky chords in the right hand give more energy or punch. We're in the bridge, maybe we want some more energy. It stabilizes because of the shapes, all these notes here. This is very nice to play because it's all close together. And left hand getting to do this melodic sort of up and down gesture with rolling eights is going to give us a lot of forward energy, and I think it's good for the bridge. Let's take a look. Okay, you can see I broke out of the pattern here as we're just about to go back. The last section here I want to show you is the full-on sort of rock and roll style of, it's not just rock and roll that does it, but it's common here. And this is a piece that was made famous by Elvis singing it. And so I've got these chords in the right hand that are ya da 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 ya da 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 da. It's going to be big and percussive and nice and carry big, like the big finish kind of sound. And I've got these octaves going down, the B, the C, the B, the A, these lines in the left hand, which will kind of sound semi-epic. These shapes are relatively easy to play. We'll see what happens when we have to jump from here to here and stuff. But the rhythm and the harmony is mostly being supplied by the right hand now. And the left hand is supplying, I guess, harmonic information because we hear the implied chords through the bass notes, but a lot of like style and tone is given through that as well. I'm going to back up one measure so you can hear that. Let's see if I can, here we go. Okay, so you get the idea. This is what I would call like a first and a half draft. we're using the principles of keeping the shapes reasonable for the hand, so that it can move from one shape to the other. We're not just spelling the chords linearly up. We're very cognizant of what we're doing with our melody interaction. For instance, you might think there's no melody interaction there, but if you look at this middle line here, there's the A going up to the B, going up to the C, D, E, F. E is in the middle, and so it's not quite so obvious, but the melody in the singer is absolutely supported inside of that. We're making conscious decisions on where the rhythm for the accompaniment is coming from, and the gestures that are used, whether they're like octaves or these 3 notes at a time, or whether the bass line is just arpeggiating up and down like this, right? Or whether we break out of that. All of these style and rhythm elements and flavor are being thought of. Note choices are almost always from the chords, with a few things that fill in the line occasionally to give it some contour and curvature. Right. The real question, of course, is now, what happens when we put it in front of the piano player? And if I'm lucky, I will get somebody in my family to play these through and have a go at it and give some feedback. Even if I play these things, it's not the same as watching somebody else, because you can see immediately what's difficult, what's fits in and is fun to play. You also just get to sit back and not use your brain power to play the instrument and listen better, or you can sing along and see what that seems like. So that's our next step.